Hello, welcome everyone. This is Caitlin Coleman. I'm Water Education Colorado's Publications and Digital Resources Managing Editor. Welcome to today's webinar, which is on innovation in underground water storage. We have 7 great panelists and a lot to cover, but before we get started, just a few logistics to go over. First, please remain muted during our presentations. We have Paulina on our team who's here to help moderate, so if you are unmuted, she might mute you. Or if you have any concerns, she will probably respond in the chat. We'll allow about 15 minutes for Q&A at the end of our time together. So at that point, we'll invite you to turn on your cameras and you can unmute as you pose questions. And if you need anything or want to communicate or type out questions as they occur to you during the presentations, please use the chat and we can circle back to your questions during the Q&A at the end. Also, the webinar is being recorded, so we'll share that recording by the end of the week, maybe sooner. A lot of you are old friends, but there are a handful of folks who are new to Water Education Colorado. So if you aren't familiar with us, we work to ensure that Coloradans are informed on water issues and equipped to make decisions that guide our state to a sustainable water future. We are a non-advocacy organization committed to providing educational opportunities, engaging Coloradans around water. And we do this in a variety of ways, through educational programming like this webinar, through leadership programs, also weekly water news coverage, through freshwater news and publications, including our magazine and community guide series and fact sheets. Our membership program supports this work, so you might have noticed that members received free registration for today's webinar. We offer at least 3 webinars every year, which are all free to members and employees of member organizations. And members also receive a subscription to our magazine and discounts on other programs and purchases, among other benefits. So if you aren't a member, please join, visit our website at wateredco.org. And if you are a member, thank you. Our webinar today ties to the summer 2025 issue of our flagship publication, Headwaters Magazine. I have a copy here if it doesn't get blurred out. We organize a webinar and other programming to dive deeper into the content from each issue of the magazine, and that summer issue focused on groundwater. And of course, that's what we're covering. We covered a variety of regions, organizations, and efforts toward groundwater sustainability in the magazine. Not limited to ASR, but that's what we're talking about today. So if you haven't read the issue, check it out. I'd also like to point you toward our community guide to Colorado groundwater. And here is that one. If you're interested in groundwater and want more background, the guide is a great place to look. Some of our panelists today helped write, edit, and review the guide. And we're currently translating it into Spanish, so that Spanish version will be available in early 2026, along with 6 other guides that will be available in Spanish, or some are already. So some quick info to get us started on today's webinar. In the groundwater issue of Headwaters, we reported that there's some serious potential for storing water underground in Colorado. Hydrogeologic studies determined groundwater systems across the state could store some 175 million acre-feet of water, which dwarfs the amount stored in reservoirs. But of course, what geology can hold and what makes sense and what water law allows are totally different realities. We also reported that there are about 13 ASR projects in various stages of development right now in Colorado. So that's not 175 million acre-feet worth. So today we're going to hear from these 7 great speakers who are involved in ASR in a variety of ways and look at what's going on and where we might be going. So we'll walk through 4 different presentations with 7 different folks. We'll hear from Courtney Hemingway with Hemingway Groundwater Engineering, who's worked on ASR since the beginning, and he'll share some basics and a look at where we've been and perhaps where ASR could be headed. Next, Lauren Moore with Castle Rock Water will discuss Castle Rock's ASR work and how it's fitting into future planning. Then Matt Sparacino with Greeley Water will share about Greeley's long-term planning and Terry Ranch project. And lastly, we'll hear a timely group presentation on efforts in Colorado to seek primacy and well permitting. So there we'll hear from Representative Leslie Smith, who represents Colorado's House District 49, and is a sponsor of the soon-to-come bill on primacy. Nate Pearson with the Colorado Department of Natural Resources, Mike Rigby with the Energy and Carbon Management Commission, and Kevin Donegan with the Colorado Division of Water Resources. And finally, we'll end with some questions, including an audience Q&A discussion, where we'll turn to you and hopefully address your questions. So feel free to type those into the chat now or hold off and raise them when we get there. Note that we have an hour and a half scheduled for the webinar, so try to stick around until 1:30 if you can. And with that, let's get to our panelists. So Courtney, you are up.
All right, let me see if I can get this figured out so I can share. All right, is that coming up, the presentation?
Yes, that looks great.
All right, so I'm Courtney Hemingway. I've been working, well, since the beginning on ASR, helped with the legislation in the 91 for this, basically requiring the state engineer to promulgate rules and regulations for aquifer storage and recovery, or ASR. So it's been since the 90s. ASR has been implemented in Colorado. There was one at Willows Water District at Denver was participating in, and then also the one at Centennial. This is an old slide, but it's been one of the best ones. This is one really kind of graphically shows what ASR versus traditional storage. Let me get one thing here. When timer started, so I get my time. Really, the benefits, the real benefits that I see are the evaporation and siting concerns. Evaporation, we lose 3 to 4 feet of water off a surface reservoir. So if you have 1,000-acre surface area, you're losing 3 to 4,000 acre feet of water to evaporation. That's huge. And the cost, if it's $25,000 an acre foot, which is probably way low now, that's $100 million worth of water and non-beneficial use. Siting concerns, we can get these things permitted very quickly as opposed. NISP is a current one that was being permitted. That took 20 years to get through the permit, and they're still struggling on some issues, versus ASR, which is basically storing water in underground formations. In this instance, the Denver Basin. This is another old one, basically kind of shows the basics, although really the storage tank should be over to the side. Basically, you take water, surface water, treat it to potable standards, and then put it down into the aquifers. Here, we really don't have to pump it down. The depths are great enough that we really actually have to break the head going down, so we don't have runaway injection. So this is kind of the basics of it. You take water, treat it to potable standards, and then inject it into the ground. On the return side, basically you just pump it back up, get it through the treatment plant, and all it really requires is disinfection. The water comes back essentially the same as what you put down. It doesn't mix. The velocities are very slow, and I have reams of data, 30 plus years of data, where you pump the water back, and you until you get to about 80 or 90 to 100% of the return what you injected, the water will come back basically the same, which is great. In the Laramie Fox Hills, which is not as pretty an aquifer as the others as far as the smell of the water and others. Putting ASR water down there, it comes back as what was injected until you get to the edge of these bubbles, as you see. So that's basically kind of how it works. ASR projects in Colorado, Centennial Water, which is now Highlands Ranch Water, is the longest running, I think, 34 years. We have 28 wells equipped for ASR. Others that are permitted or in process, and we're going to have some follow-up on this. Consolidated Mutual, Colorado Springs, and Castle Pines North, those were all early ones. And the RA stands, which we'll get into, rule authorization. It's different than the rest of these. Consolidated Mutual, I don't think, is doing it anymore because they got hooked onto Denver. Colorado Springs, I saw a couple people from Colorado Springs on the list. We were doing it at Northgate. I don't think they're doing it anymore up there. We'd stored a bunch of water in there, but I don't know if that's operating more. And Castle Pines North was an experimental one, and I don't believe they're doing it. Town of Castle Rock, we're going to hear from coming up. Meridian, I'm working with right now. They have one active one that's been going on for several years, about 7 or 8 years. East Cherry Creek has tested. I believe their ASR system, Rangeview, I think, may have done some testing. Stonegate Village is another one I work on. We've got 4 active ASR, and we're adding 2 more at the beginning of the year. So we'll have 6 ASR wells there. Inverness, Cottonwood, Denver, North Glen, those have all have some form of ASR being projected or possibly in the test stage. Wingfoot also in Greeley, we'll hear from that later. Greeley's Wingfoot, the Terry Bison Ranch project, which has ASR incorporated in it. The other is really what drives it is down here is wise water and the need for economical storage for the water. Wise water is highly treated water, fairly expensive water, and it comes at a very variable schedule, a lot of times in the low demand period. So you need to find a place to store it. Well, you don't want to put it into a reservoir because you have to retreat it again, and also you lose water due to evaporation and leakage. So Wise Water has really been a driving force for a lot of people in the South Metro area to conduct ASR. So projects, there's rule authorization versus permitted, and it's a stark difference. Rule authorization projects, as I said, were Centennial Consolidated, Colorado Springs, and Castle Pines. All others are permitted. So the beauty of rule authorization through, and this is through the EPA, we'll touch on a little bit. The state has also permitting, but it's fairly straightforward, and that's on the recovery. EPA is for the injection side. The state engineer is on the recovery side from the permitting. So the rule authorization is just an annual report to them, no renewal required. Permitted projects, you have to have pilot testing, quarterly reports to the EPA, and you have to have a renewal every 3 years. And we'll touch on a little bit on that coming up. So why use ASR? It provides drought reserve to supplement surface water storage. Again, it's not impacted the Denver Basin. It's not impacted by drought. So it's a reliable storage unit. But the key again is evaporation. There's no evaporation from an ASR, which saves, it can save thousands of acre feet of water to non-beneficial use of evaporation. You can capitalize on existing well fields. If in South Metro, most of them are on wells, so we can use the existing systems. It's very little change you have to do. You basically have to put what's called a flow control valve on the bottom of the ejection string, which is just your normal pump and column pipe. You just put a valve in there to conduct the ASR. Helps reduce the water level declines and sustain groundwater supplies. Minimum risk of contamination. Another thing which we found up in the north is some of the things. Contamination may be the gasoline truck that tips over near the reservoir or something like that on a surface water. But more lately, it's been because of fire. Runoff off fire areas that really is creating a lot of havoc after a fire. We get rains or snow melt off of it, and we're getting a lot of ash and stuff coming down, which has caused a lot of problem on the north. I know up in the Pooter and some others. So minimal permitting requirements. EPA, which I will heartily cheer on the state taking over primacy for that. They've been great in past. They've now been a little more difficult and dragging. SEO, the state engineer's office, has been great. It's a very straightforward process to get the recovery part of ASR. Key ingredients, source, you need water to put in. ASR doesn't work if you don't have water to put in it. If you have diversion, storage, treatment, distribution, that'll help you move water to the site. Have a well field that's favorable, that you have wells that can inject at a reasonable rate. And I believe there was a presentation a few years ago from East Cherry Creek that they have lower capacity wells, but if you have multiple wells, you can actually get a lot of water in and store water, even though it's a lower injection rate. If you have multiple wells, you can still get a lot of water in the ground. Minor hydraulic modifications, as I said, basically you have very minimal changes to an existing well field and wells. You basically have to add a flow control valve at the bottom of the well, right above the pump, and then minimal changes on the surface area. Basically, connecting to pipelines and treatment systems, again, tapping existing lines to bring the water there. Highlands Ranch, we take it from the treatment plant. We have two pumping stations that push it out to the field for injection. Centennial, basically, it's a great system. I'll talk about that because it's the longest running one. It's based on surface and groundwater. It's commonly referred to as a conjunctive use system, which makes it very reliable. In 2000, 2001, when we had the significant drought, they were able to rely upon their wells and actually recovered some of their injected water during that period. So again, they get water from for their system from South Platte treated surface water and then also groundwater. They inject into three of the four Denver Basin aquifers: the Denver, the Arapahoe, and the Laramie Fox Hills aquifers. This is just a map of their system. There are 54 wells spread around. There are several up in the residential area, but they have numerous ones out in the open area, which makes it a lot easier just for access and different things. But they have them both in the developed area and the undeveloped area, and they have 20 of them permitted right now. Just a total that we had a little while ago in 2023, or Centennial or in Highlands Ranch had 17 wells injecting. The total injection rate was 3 million gallons a day. I'm kind of when you really think about that, if you look at what a 3 million gallon tank is on the surface, that we can put that amount of water in the ground every day, and that's only using a partial number of their wells, 17 of them. We injected into three different aquifers, and the total stored, I think, right now with what they've recovered, they have 14,800 acre feet of water in storage right now. So again, that would be about 1 year's supply for Highlands Ranch that they could recover in and above their Senate Bill 5 or their water decrees. They can pull that much more water out to meet their needs. Another one is Meridian I work on. They have one well that is permitted and been well, they have two permitted wells. They've been injecting only in the Arapahoe well. Um, Again, as part of the permitting process, they had to complete pilot testing, which is 4 cycles. You inject for 3 days, let it set in 3 days and recover, then 7 days, 14 days, and then 21 days are the different cycles. Then they require this state engineer's artificial recharge extraction permit, fairly straightforward. We have to do quarterly and annual reports to be filed with the EPA. We have to do sampling of that. You have to take, in ours, the permit, you have to take nitrosamine samples from all the wells if you pump from them. If you inject during the year, you have to do an injection water quality sample, which is a much more comprehensive. It's called Appendix J list. It's about a $3,000, $4,000 sample. And each of the wells have to be tested for that Appendix J every year if they pump. So, as I said, permit expired in November 2021. We have been trying to get that modified, but we're operating under the existing permit right now in the criteria there. We filed a renewal with that, with trying to extend the renewal period to make it a 10-year period, adjust to only annual reporting. And then all the data that we've collected to date shows there's no problem with nitrosamines. That was the biggest issue when we went through the permitting of this. Nitrosamines was one under the EPA's concern, contaminants of concern. So that was the big thing. We've had years of demonstration that there's no problem with nitrosamines, either in the injection water or when we recover it. Concern related to ASR projects in Colorado, EPA permitting. I am fully cheering on that the state take over that. It gets very difficult a lot of times when you get to the EPA. Again, they've had a lot of people resign who've been in the program. It's getting more difficult. They also sometimes revert to back east, and people you can't talk to don't know. And so, at least with the state, it would be great to be able to go down and talk to people. PFAS is another thing that's coming up. It's going to be similar to nitrosamines in their worries. They haven't come up with anything yet, or at least in our renewal. There's no drinking water standard for it. How do you regulate and permit under ASR? Actually, there are now standards, so they will do that. But their current direction is to require water treatment plants or water supply sources to be PFAS free. That's the way they want to control it, is at the source area rather than having it more at the injection site. So with that, we have no resolution of our requested modification of the Meridian permit after 4 years. So it's it would be nice to have some resolution of that, but they have not come up with anything yet. Let's see here. Oop, come on. So one of the things I wanted to also touch on is another one which I just added in. It's we're looking at as another form of subsurface water storage, and these are shallow alluvial water storage systems. We're in the process right now of trying to develop a couple of the process projects. It really is basically taking surface water and then storing it not in deep bedrock aquifers, but in shallow alluvial systems. And this is another kind of a view of it where we take water off either water a treated pipeline or a raw water pipeline, take it over to the box, which is basically a bentonite slurry wall that keys into the bedrock that isolates the groundwater from all the rest of the groundwater. The beauty of that is that there is no EPA permitting required. I've sat with them and they don't require that. And even with the state engineer, it's a very straightforward process to get these things permitted. They already have guidelines for it, which is very straightforward and relatively simple, actually. So this is another one. Again, the benefit of this is that you get no evaporation again, there's really no change to the land surface. This is another just quick picture of it. The bentonite wall. A machine will come in and lay a bentonite wall keyed into the bedrock, non-permeable layer, and then it creates an isolation of water inside the box. That becomes, again, not a part of the groundwater system. That's why EPA is not regulating that because it's not part of the groundwater. And also, basically, once it's isolated, it's just like a reservoir. So there's the permitting side is pretty easy for injection and extraction of water into the system. I'm getting close here. So in summary, ASR is being employed by several water districts in Colorado. Meridian is in the renewal process. So is also Stonegate. I'm involved with that. We filed for a renewal that is only 2 years old, I think, beyond its renewal period. ASR provides a viable potable water storage alternative to surface water. There's so many benefits. Cost. Those alluvial systems we're looking at, maybe in the order of $5,000 to $7,000 an acre foot for storage. And there's a site we're looking at, 250 acres, 90 feet deep, can store up to 5,000 to 6,000 plus acre feet of water in 250 acres. So a lot of benefits. ASR has been a proven strategy for 30 years. We've been operating at Centennial and others for over 30 years. So proven technology. Gone through it very quickly. So if you have any questions, my phone number is probably the best right now. Unfortunately, right now my email is down. Microsoft has done some wizardry on me and it's been shut down for a couple days. I'm trying to get that resolved, but hopefully within the next few days I'll get that back up and running. So if you want to copy that down, hopefully in the next few days we'll get that back up and running. But the phone number if you want to contact me, and that's it.
Thanks, Courtney. And next, we'll turn it over to Lauren Moore.
Perfect. Let me go ahead and share. Awesome. Well, hello everyone. My name is Lauren Moore and I am the Water Resources Manager for Castle Rock Water. Today I'll be sharing an overview of the town's ASR program from its early stages to where we are today and how ASR is helping us diversify and strengthen our water supply. Oops. There we go. So Castle Rock Water operates as an enterprise fund for the town of Castle Rock, meaning our services are funded through water bill revenues rather than sales tax. While many of you may be familiar with Colorado, for those of you who are not, Castle Rock is located roughly halfway between Denver and Colorado Springs. Like many Front Range communities, we experience a semi-arid climate, which makes a reliable water supply a critical challenge. The graph shown highlights the town's rapid growth. Since I began working for the town in 2016, about 10 years ago, Castle Rock has grown approximately by 41%. Our current population is nearing 90,000 and we're planning a build out of 155,000 by 2050. As growth continues, so does our water demand. In response, our 2021 Water Resources Strategic Master Plan establishes a goal of achieving 75% renewable water supplies by 2050. We're actually currently about halfway to that goal, around 32% renewable. This is why securing a long-term water supply that is sustainable is a top priority for Castle Rock Water. Before diving into our timeline, I'd like to explain why the town chose to incorporate aquifer storage and recovery. Castle Rock prides itself on being a national leader in water resource management, and we are uniquely positioned in what I like to call the sweet spot of the Denver Basin aquifer. The graphic to the right illustrates Castle Rock's location within the Denver Basin aquifer. We currently operate 4 ASR wells, 2 completed in the Denver Formation at depths of approximately 1,300 to 1,600 feet, and 2 in the Arapahoe Formation at depths of approximately 1,850 to 2,300 feet. This configuration allows us to efficiently co-locate Denver and Arapahoe wells at 2 well sites. More broadly, ASR, as Courtney has mentioned, offers several key benefits, including underground storage with minimal evaporative losses compared to surface reservoirs, improved drought resilience through the use of renewable water supplies, lower infrastructure costs relative to surface storage options, reduced pumping costs due to decreased hydraulic head, and the potential for localized stabilization of declining groundwater levels. The town began site investigations, retrofit potential, and source water options. In 2013, the Plum Creek Water Purification Facility came online, enabling treatment of renewable surface water and supporting the initiation of ASR well design and permitting. Between 2013 and 2017, 2 existing wells were rehabilitated and retrofitted for ASR. Pilot cycle testing was conducted and permitting efforts were initiated with CDPHE and the EPA. Pilot test results confirmed the feasibility of ASR in both the Denver and Arapahoe aquifers. Then from 2018 through 2020, the town worked closely with the EPA through multiple review cycles, conceptual facility planning, and construction of 2 additional ASR wells. In September 2020, Castle Rock received its final area permit with EPA, with letters of authorization to inject for all 4 ASR wells granted in 2023. Today, the town is completing additional pilot cycle testing on the original retrofitted wells and preparing to begin testing on the remaining 2, marking the culmination of a long collaborative process that has helped shape the current ASR program. All right. As we mentioned earlier, the town operates 2 ASR sites. One is located on the west side of town and uses treated surface water from Plum Creek, a tributary to the South Platte River, as its source. The second site, which I'll discuss on the next slide, is located on the east side of town and uses Wise water as its source. Because of the lengthy process required to implement our ASR program, we have had the opportunity to evaluate different types of flow control valves. The west side site was initially retrofitted with basket valves. However, we experienced several well issues with one of the wells and decided to test an alternative ASR valve known as a 3R valve. The basket valve system, shown on the left, is manufactured in Colorado and uses a downhole bladder that inflates with nitrogen to control the direction of flow during pumping and injection. The 3R valve, shown on the right, is a hydraulically controlled valve manufactured in Oregon. For this system, the control cabinet was added outside the well building after retrofitting the site, and injection rates for these wells typically range from 150 to 250 gallons per minute. On the second site, located on the east side of town, this site is situated just outside of our Ray Waterman treatment plant. This site was selected for its potential to store Wise water, which is renewable surface water supplied through a regional partnership with Denver and Aurora. Currently, Wise water is retreated through the treatment plant. However, upgrades are underway to allow direct injection into our system, and pending approval, direct injection for aquifer storage during periods of excess availability. Unlike the west side ASR site, the east side wells were newly constructed in 2020 and were later incorporated into our EPA final area permit. In the photo shown on the right, you can see the equipment installation of the valve section in one of the wells, as well as the well vault and pipe gallery located subsurface, which differs from the west side site, which has an above ground well house that was shown in the previous slide. So this ASR project also included a pilot study in partnership with Hydro Resources and Colorado State University to test a flow control valve with integrated power generation. During injection, the valve is designed to generate electricity through reverse rotation and return power to the grid. While this ASR system is still in the commissioning phase, very preliminary estimates suggest this power generation could supply electricity for up to 65 homes per month. Injection rates for these wells typically range from 250 to 400 gallons per minute. And I've showed some of the preliminary data, just very brief calculations on the slide. And I will say this is simply taken from, I think one of the wells was injecting for close to 3 days and the other well was only injecting for a couple of hours. So as we begin to do some more testing, we'll have some better numbers, but that is some very exciting data that came out of that. So as mentioned earlier, bringing the ASR program online has been a time-consuming process with several challenges along the way. Key issues have included mechanical and operational difficulties, such as well equipment performance, control programming, valve functionality, and occasional well clogging. These challenges can take time to resolve and sometimes result in missed opportunities when water is available for storage. Our ASR operations are intentionally limited to periods of excess water availability. During peak summer demand, the system operates in pumping mode, while excess supplies typically occur in the winter months. As a result, pilot cycle testing, resolution of mechanical issues must all be coordinated within relatively short seasonal windows. Another challenge has been operator buy-in. As shown in the photos, we currently manage 2 ASR sites using 3 different types of flow control valves, along with additional yard piping and manual valve turning required to switch between pumping and injection modes. As the program continues to mature and we complete multiple seasons of ASR with fewer disruptions, we expect operators to better recognize the long-term value of ASR and gain confidence in its role as a reliable component of our water supply portfolio. As we continue to work through the challenges we've encountered, my hope is that they will ultimately represent only a small chapter in the larger timeline of Castle Rock Water refining and optimizing its ASR operations. So what comes next? ASR is a key component of the town's long-term renewable water supply strategy. As mentioned earlier, Castle Rock has set a goal of achieving 75% renewable by 2050. With our 4 ASR wells, we anticipate injecting approximately 400 acre-feet per year, or about 2.5% of our total supply. Looking ahead, we plan to expand the program by adding additional wells, identifying the most effective valve technology for our operations, and establishing consistent, reliable operational practices to maximize underground storage. We've also began discussing the potential for regional ASR collaboration. While the town currently lacks direct connectivity with neighboring ASR systems, ongoing regional conversations and innovation may present opportunities for a shared approach in the future, should it prove feasible and beneficial. I'd like to thank Water Education Colorado for hosting this webinar, all the speakers, the audience, for allowing me to talk about one of my favorite subjects. My contact information is listed. Please reach out if you'd like to chat more about ASR. And now I will go ahead and pass it over to Matt.
All right. Hello, everyone. Let me just get this pulled up. All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Matt Spursino. I'm the Water Resource Planning and Watershed Program Manager for the City of Greeley. And I'll be talking about our Terry Ranch Aquifer Storage and Recovery Project. So I'll give you a brief overview of Greeley Water, say why did we choose an ASR project, go over some high-level details, talk about when we plan to implement the project. I'll cover some of the unique financing for Terry Ranch, and then give you an update on progress to date. So Greeley Water is the enterprise that provides water and sewer to the city of Greeley and some of the surrounding areas. Greeley is located in Weld County. We're about 60 miles northeast of Denver. And our current water supply is really from 4 different source watersheds, including the Poudre, the Upper Colorado River through Northern Waters, Colorado Big Thompson and Windy Gap projects, and then also the Upper Laramie River, and then native supplies from the Big Thompson. And our main uses are municipal, agricultural, and industrial. Last year, we had a service population of about 158,000 people, 112,000 of which are within Greeley city limits. And that delivery volume was about 26,500 acre feet of treated and 2,800 acre feet of untreated water. So here's a map of our system. It's extensive, coming over from the east where Greeley is located, and then Laramie Basin is about 100 miles away to the northwest, and then of course the Upper Colorado. And I'll zoom in on Terry Ranch, which is up on the Wyoming border. And the blue parcels here are the Terry Bison Ranch ownership. And the white kind of checkerboarded parcels are owned by the state land board. And that will become a little bit important later on in my talk. Okay, so why ASR for Greeley? We are also expecting population growth over the next 45 years, anywhere between 70,000 and 188,000 people. So we must develop new water sources while maintaining affordable rates. However, there's quite a bit of uncertainty around how and when that demand growth is really going to occur. So from the early 2000s, we were pursuing a reservoir expansion project for Milton Seaman. That is the reservoir pictured in the bottom left. And we were working on permitting. Courtney alluded to this. These reservoir projects are big, expensive, and timely. We were 15 years and $19 million into the process when in 2019, we were going through what we called a revised alternative screening analysis, and Terry Ranch popped out as a feasible alternative. So we spent the next 2 years, 2019 to 2021, really diving into it to see if it would work. And we ultimately decided that it would, and we committed in 2021. So then shortly after that, we kicked off a process for developing an integrated water resources plan. And this plan really guides our long-term planning, and a major component of that is now our Terry Ranch ASR project. So when we talk about Terry Ranch, it's it kind of historically been the 1.2 million acre feet of non-tributary Upper Laramie aquifer water that was decreed in this 2011 CW 275 decree. And then there's this additional state land board piece that I'll talk about a little later. But our goal is to not deplete the aquifer below 80% of that initial volume. And it's really intended to be used as a supplemental drought supply. So during periods of excess supply, we will take treated water from our Bellevue water treatment plant that's northwest of Fort Collins. It'll go in our 60-inch supply line and then turn out into this new bidirectional pipeline and be injected up at Terry Ranch. And our initial estimates are that there's about 300,000 acre foot of additional storage available in the aquifer. And then when we need it, we'll extract. And we have some naturally occurring uranium issues up there. So we're going to have a small treatment plant that'll do ion exchange before we put it back into our bidirectional pipeline. And then it'll rejoin our 60-inch near Windsor before going back into the city. So we financed this in a pretty unique way. It is a public-private partnership with Wingfoot Water Resources. So Greeley provided credits for this purchase instead of cash. And then Wingfoot takes those credits and sells them, and they're redeemable to meet our water dedication requirements. It provides really a third option, in addition to people bringing wet water or paying our cash in lieu rate. And this really allows, or the structuring of this deal and the infrastructure that's planned really allows for phased implementation with lower overall risk for Greeley. And what did we receive in this deal is primarily the non-tributary decree for that 1.2 million acre feet. We got 5 existing wells. They're municipal size wells, the access easement to get to them. And then we acquired the state land board lease for the checkerboarded parcels, and then $125 million commitment from Wingfoot towards the infrastructure. Wingfoot, for their part, they received 12,000 credits, and these are intentionally priced below our cash in lieu rate to really incentivize people going to the credits before cash in lieu. Wingfoot also has some revenue sharing options, and then they can sell credits back to us if they need to. Okay, so when are we going to actually implement this? This gets back to the IWRP, or the Integrated Water Resource Plan. And that plan is really a holistic long-term evaluation of our water supply system. It integrates everything from our snowpack, which provides our river flows, our water availability. We look at our infrastructure operations, and then water demands. And we evaluate how changes to future conditions are going to impact that water supply. So we look at how variable is our water yield and what threats do we have to the system. Courtney mentioned fire. That's real for us. 2020 was a real wake-up call with the Cameron Peak and East Troublesome fires affecting all 4 of those source watersheds. And then the impacts after fire, debris flows, erosion, and that's on top of what we're already dealing kind of year to year with drought out on the plains, and climate change just affecting snowpack in the mountains. So we pair that with our demands, and then we look at what projects can we implement that perform well in that whole range of future conditions. And what I'm showing here is our kind of a demand graph, and then our supply on the top here. And what we've seen over the last 15 years is that our demands are relatively static. So that's the solid green line from 2011 to 2025. And that's despite population growth. This is showing just the Greeley focus demands, and Greeley population has increased about 17% over that time period. We know that at some point in the future, our demands are going to start increasing when we add that 70 to 188,000 people. We just don't know exactly how or when. So that's kind of showed in the dashed green line and then the shading. And then we look at our supply, and the IWRP considered a couple of scenarios, including what is the solid gray line, which is a no climate change scenario at about 44,000 acre feet of current demand. That's unlikely to last into the future. So that's what we show on this graph. What we call the continued trends scenario, which has our current entitlements just yielding less through the future. And at some point, that demand line in dash green is going to intersect with that gold line. We don't know when, but we need Terry Ranch to be online kind of just before that happens. If we bring it online too far in advance of that, then we're sort of unduly burdening our current ratepayers. And if we miss it, then we're going to be short on water. And the IWRP has this framework through the adaptive plan to inform when we need to have Terry Ranch online. And a few things that adaptive plan looks at are first and foremost monitoring those demand and supply conditions. But we also look at water rights changes, acquisitions throughout the 4 basins that supply our source water. And then we review other water supply opportunities. So if there's a good deal in the Poudre Basin that might give us some water, then we might pursue that, and it could potentially push out when we need Terry Ranch online. And then our capital improvement program identifies those priority projects that perform well in that full range of future conditions. Obviously, Terry Ranch is the main one there. But we can accelerate or slow the construction of pipeline, well field build out, and planning studies based on what we're seeing in the adaptive plan. So progress to date, we have been building the bidirectional pipeline. So between last year and this year, we're up to about 14.5 miles, or we will be by the end of construction this year. And that'll leave about 16 miles to go. And the goal here was to, with these work packages A through D, to get us out of the high growth area. And then we'll slow it down a little bit, and then look for the IWRP to inform the future completion of the pipeline. And we're also working on some modeling studies to really understand how and when we can use our excess surface water supplies to go into Terry Ranch. And then we just completed our state land board drilling project. So this was a huge effort. The reason we did this was to satisfy the terms of that lease that I said we assumed in the Wingfoot deal. And it secures our rights to a much bigger and contiguous aquifer area. It'll also allow us to actually start on some small scale water production. And then we're well set up for future monitoring and testing. So Hydro Resources drilled the wells. Martin Wood and Ellery Water were our consulting hydrogeologists. And this was 16 wells. There's 6-inch PVC construction completed between 285 and 700 feet below ground. 5 of those wells we drilled all the way to the bottom of the Upper Laramie Aquifer, so a little bit deeper. And this, we were drilling 24/7 for 11 months, just finished up in October of this year. And then what's next is for us to file a water court application, being co-applicants with the state land board, to seek a non-tributary determination for the water underneath those state land board parcels. And as we do that, we will be joining a crowded field up in the Upper Laramie by the Wyoming border. So this map just shows recent court cases really in the last 5 or 6 years, with the exception being our initial Terry Ranch, which is the salmon color up in the northwest. The blue that kind of fills in the gaps, that's the state land board that I'm talking about. But there's a lot of interest up here, including from Front Range Land and Cattle. That was an application that just hit the resume in October. So we are going to be tracking all of this pretty closely, and it's going to be busy and kind of an exciting time for the area. And with that, I will conclude and pass it back to Caitlin. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Very interesting. So we've heard some great presentations about specific communities, and now we're going to shift gears a little bit and hear from our DNR, DWR, ECMC team. And I think Representative Smith is going to get us started. So whoever is kicking it off can get going.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to join this webinar. I've learned a lot about ASRs, and I appreciate that. Can I have the next slide, please? My name is Leslie Smith, and I represent House District 49. And I'd like to share with you my commitment to supporting improvements in how the state of Colorado regulates activities that relate to water management. As many of you know, the US EPA currently regulates most classes of underground injection control wells in Colorado. In the past, the General Assembly has authorized Colorado's Energy and Carbon Management Commission to pursue primacy to regulate Class 2 and Class 6 wells. I'm currently a member of the House Agriculture, Water, and Natural Resources Committee, as well as the Energy and Environmental Committee. Professionally, I was a biogeochemist of wetland systems and a science educator, and I use many of WECO's publications for my teacher professional development work. And those publications are really wonderful for the layperson. So thank you for publishing those. I'm excited to be working with my colleagues, Representative Pascal and Senators Simpson and Henriksen, along with the Colorado Department of Natural Resources, to grant the ECMC the authority to pursue primacy to regulate the remaining classes of UIC wells. I believe it's time for Colorado to join the many other states that have taken on the authority to regulate these wells, because this presents an opportunity to attract and support emerging industries and technologies to help achieve climate goals, including carbon management, geothermal, and hydrogen operations. Having the state of Colorado regulate these wells rather than the US EPA will provide certainty, transparency, and predictability for operators, stakeholders, and local governments in Colorado. I'm glad that the DNR team is available today to share more information with you about this proposal. With that, I'll turn over the presentation to Nate Pearson, DNR's Assistant Director for Water. And again, I thank you for this opportunity.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Representative Smith. I really appreciate your overview and introduction. And thank you, Caitlin, and the Water Education Colorado team for hosting this webinar. It's been really great to listen in to the other presenters, and we're glad to be able to talk about this upcoming legislative effort. So our true experts, Mike Rigby, our Energy Transition Senior Scientist, and Kevin Donegan, the Chief of Hydrogeology at DWR, will talk in more detail about this proposal and the scientific and regulatory details. But I want to give a brief overview of why the DNR views this work is so important and why we're pursuing this change in statute. So as has been covered, I'll go quickly through this, but underground injection control wells inject fluids into the earth. Sometimes, as in the case of ASR, fluid is clean water that may be destined to be drinking water or irrigation water in the future. However, often the fluids injected are potentially hazardous. And since groundwater is a primary source of water supply across the nation, the drilling and operation of underground injection control wells has been closely regulated since 1974, when Congress passed the Safe Drinking Water Act. And while the injection of radioactive waste has been banned nationally since the 1980s, wastewater, industrial waste, oil and gas fluids, and even CO2 are all injected into the earth by UIC wells. And so the goal of UIC regulations has been and remains protecting drinking water supplies while allowing UIC wells to safely operate. As has already been discussed a little bit, and I think we can go to the next, we're already on the next slide. There are 6 classes of UIC wells, as shown here on this slide, which I believe comes from the Utah Division of Oil, Gas, and Mining. So thanks, Utah. There are 6 classes designated by the type of fluid being injected and the depth of injection. As has already, the EPA is the primary regulator for UIC wells, but they also have the authority to delegate that regulatory authority to states. A number of other states have already been granted regulatory primacy. And in fact, Colorado has already been granted primacy for class 2 wells, which are oil and gas related. And we anticipate gaining primacy for class 6 wells, which are CO2, in 2026. And what we're here to discuss today is a legislative proposal that would allow the state to pursue primacy for all of these well classes. And I want to underscore with that point that we are not proposing fundamental changes to the way these wells are regulated, nor are we discussing different technologies than those currently utilized. But with this proposal, we believe that across the board state regulatory authority of USC wells will provide a more streamlined regulatory program that continues to protect water resources, considers more Colorado-specific factors, attracts and supports emerging industries, supports new water management strategies, reduces overlap between the state and federal agencies, and more certainty and accessibility for operators and stakeholders in this process. And so those are some of the many reasons why we're pursuing this proposal. And we're happy to answer questions and really look forward to this public legislative process. But with that, I'd like to thank you all for the time and pass it to my colleague, Mike Rigby with the ECMC.
Thanks, Nate. Hello, everyone. I'm Michael Rigby. I am the Energy Transition Senior Scientist with the ECMC. I work kind of on new program development, geothermal, carbon sequestration, as well as this full UIC program. I want to talk briefly. In 2023, the legislature had directed us to compile a study looking at if and how the state should pursue full primacy There's a good amount of content on this. We worked with stakeholders as well as other agencies, as well as did our own kind of research into all the different things required. This is available publicly on our website and at this link if you'd like more information from that study. One of the items kind of identified is if pursuing a full program beyond class 2 and 6, in which we already have authority to pursue or already have authority over, you need a lead agency. And in this proposal, ECMC is identified as this lead agency. And what this lead agency is the agency that'll manage the primacy application. We have experience doing this, very recent experience, and as we've compiled the class 6 application. It's also the agency that'll coordinate the state program with the EPA. So kind of being the middleman for all involved folks at the state with the EPA, managing and reporting requirements. Any annual federal grant program efforts would be done through us. So that's what the lead agency is. Next slide. There's also implementing agencies. So the implementing agencies are the ones that actually have the regulatory authority, develop the rules and regulations, do permits or authorize things by rule, and are the day-to-day folks working on the program. So in our proposal, there will be 2 implementing agencies, ECMC being one of them. We would add to our class 2 and class 6 program, we would add class 1, 4, and 5. As Nate noted, 4 is banned and there are no wells, so it's really adding class 1 and 5. Of interest to this group here today, class 5 includes ASR projects. The other implementing agency is the DRMS, the Division of Reclamation, Mining, and Safety, and they would be implementing class 3 wells, which are solution mining wells, which overlaps with their authority over existing mining operations in the state. There would also be consulting agencies, and this is really where we think we can shine above the EPA in many ways. We communicate with all of these sister agencies across the state quite regularly, and we are familiar with the right people to talk to. We have good collaborative working relationships that go beyond anything that the EPA does, let's say, in collaboration with some of these agencies. So these agencies would not have regulatory authority, but we would consult with them on specific projects. So there are a variety of agencies that may have a project that interacts with a UIC well. In the case of ASR, that's the Division of Water Resources that has regulatory obligations for the production well. We would be consulting with them closely through any sort of process to permit or authorize an ASR project once we had primacy. So lead agency, ECMC, implementing agency, ECMC and DRMS, and a variety of consulting agencies depending on the specific project. Next slide. And Nate mentioned some of this, but some of the main advantages we see is we can make a tailored approach. We're familiar with our resources. We're familiar with all of our folks that work in all these divisions across the state that could be impacted by projects. So we know who to talk to. We can likely streamline the process by having everyone aware, creating collaborative opportunities with these multiple agencies. We also think there are some emerging energies and technologies such as geothermal carbon management and hydrogen that may interact with some of these wells, where we could make more of a one-stop shop at the state rather than having wells permitted at both the federal and state level with a little bit of a disconnect there. So we believe our collaborations, our history of working together with these agencies, as well as our understanding of wellbore construction and isolating fluids from contaminating fluids from groundwater horizons, all serve as positives in bringing this to the state. We do intend to retain approval timelines, if not beat them in certain cases, by allocating proper resources to these projects. And we think this provides reliability and resource commitment as we have much less fluctuating priorities every 4 to 8 years, and we can really commit to staffing up this program and working with the industry as well as local governments and all impacted folks kind of consistently through time. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Kevin to kind of talk a little bit more about these projects. And like Nate said, happy to answer questions that may come up. Thanks.
Thank you. My name's Kevin Donegan. I'm chief of the hydrogeology section at the Division of Water Resources, also known as the Office of State Engineer, if you've heard that from Courtney earlier. Just wanted to highlight exactly how this primacy would work if if this legislation was to pass and ECMC was granted the authority to be the lead agency. So specifically for ASR projects, ECMC would be the implementing agency who authorized the injection of that water through Class 5 wells. They would undertake a rulemaking focused on the technical criteria standards related to the injection borehole, or the well bore, but also considering the geochemistry, the water quality aspects. And that's when they would start consulting with Water Quality Control Division, DWR on the well bore, and just wanted to highlight, as a consulting agency, we'd be working tightly with ECMC on water rights considerations, the aquifer depths and locations, underground sources of drinking water, and also the Board of Examiners water well construction rules would still apply to these structures. They are a well constructed in Colorado. You got to follow the well construction rules. And then, if Courtney mentioned earlier too, the artificial recharge extraction rules would still apply. That deals with the permitting of the water that you pull back out of these wells and put to beneficial use. So those have been in place for quite a while. They were amended in 2018, and having those at the state level too also allows us to adopt and amend those as needed, and local concerns can be addressed. So just wanted to assure you that DWR would still be heavily involved in these ASR projects, and we wouldn't just be sending it off to ECMC. Mike and I talk almost every day, it seems. I see him more than some of my other DWR coworkers on some of the geothermal stuff. So happy to take any questions, and I've added a slide. I can get back there with all of our email addresses. He's not here today, but Aaron Ray, DNR's Director of Policy, is helping manage the stakeholding process for this legislation. And of course, Daphne Gervais had to step away, I believe, but she's DNR's legislative liaison. So if you have any questions, let us know. And thank you, Caitlin and Wiko, for the time today.
Thanks all. While we're still on the state primacy issue, you guys talked a lot about all the good things that would come of this. Are there any downsides right now, or any, criticism of the idea?
I'm happy to jump in there. I think there's always some skepticism when building new programs. So we're happy to talk with anybody that has any thoughts or questions to kind of work through that. Additionally, this legislative effort is meant to stay pretty general and broad. And we will be planning to really dive into the details of how the regulations work in rulemaking. But we need authority to do said rulemaking and then to pursue primacy. And we expect this to be a multi-year process. So there will be plenty of time to engage and work with us. I would flag maybe one item that is different, because we do want to accurate or appropriately staff this program, is we are seeking the authority to have fees for these UIC wells. And that would be something where we would seek authority to be able to make fees, but it would be during a rulemaking in which stakeholders can give thoughtful input and a lot longer lead time than just this year, probably over the next year or two, where we would actually develop the fees associated with all these different kinds of wells.
Thank you. And so at this point, I'd like to, well, first remind everyone that our webinar goes until 1:30. So if you're still here, you probably recognize that, but try to stick around if you can. And go ahead and you can type your questions into the chat. We've received quite a few, and that's wonderful. I have a few questions myself, and I think we have time for everything we've heard so far. So first, I'm wondering if any of our panelists who were not in the primacy group have any thoughts on this idea of state privacy. And Lauren spoke to some of the challenges with ASR. Is permitting one of the major challenges? Are there other challenges you want to speak to that are standing in the way of ramping up these efforts?
I'll step in on this one in that I've been in the permitting of these from 91 on. And I think I have 38 wells permitted, I think somewhere in there. And it's just gotten increasingly difficult to do that. And once they went to the permitting versus the rule authorization, it stepped up a lot of the requirements. I'd love to be able to be a part of this process when we develop the rules and regulations. It's almost like when we started ASR 91, again, passed the legislation, helped pass the legislation that basically said state engineer promulgate rules and regulations. A bunch of people involved in it were working with the state engineer during that time to develop the rules, which I think are a great set of rules for operating ASR and the extraction part. So I look forward to working with the state on now maybe streamlining this process and again having a stake in the development of these rules. As you know, with the EPA, we really didn't have much ability to shape or form the rules that they operate on. So this would be welcomed, I think.
Lauren or Matt, any thoughts? We can keep moving on.
I think just to mirror what Courtney said, I think a streamlined approach would definitely be beneficial. And really, I don't see any harm with that, again, streamlined approach to kind of make things a little more efficient in the permitting process.
Yeah, and for us, I mean, since we haven't gone through the permitting with the EPA, we're certainly tracking this closely, but everything we're hearing seems like we'll be in full support, but we don't have formal opinions yet.
And whether related to permitting or not, does anyone have thoughts on what the future of ASR looks like? Kind of big picture thinking.
Yeah, Caitlin, I could answer this one first. I think for us, the future with ASR is pretty hopeful. Agriculture has been really an essential part of Greeley's identity. I mean, since the founding of Union Colony, and today we have a pretty robust agricultural program or agricultural rental program. So I think Terry Ranch kind of in the long term will allow us to keep providing water to agriculture even as we grow, which isn't always the case with municipalities who buy and change agricultural water rights to meet their future demand.
And I'll add, I think ASR, some of the things that are coming about are, I know in the South Metro area, we're looking at a regional type project where maybe in those entities that have a more favorable groundwater system that like Castle Rock and Parker area are in the kind of the sweet spot of the Denver Basin, the deepest, some of the more prolific wells versus more eastern or northern. That we could store water in those areas as a regional storage basis, basically just like putting in a reservoir that everybody can fill or take water out of. So that's kind of an exciting thing I think that we're looking at. So those with areas that don't have as good of aquifer conditions could still benefit from ASR. The other one, which like I said, I'm kind of excited about, is the alluvial storage just kind of the permitting and not requiring a lot of land, all the different things. So the shallow alluvial is pretty exciting right now too, just to, again, the evaporation losses, and then really you buy land and it really doesn't change anything. You don't have to commit large areas, and basically land on top can stay almost the same. So a lot of encouraging things, I think, for the future.
I would agree. I think ASR just provides that potential for a buffer for a drought scenario and just kind of providing that extra layer of sustainability that you might call upon in the future. So, for example, for our long-term project, where we hope as we get our program up and running that we're able to just sort of compound that underground storage over time and then only draw on it when we actually need it.
And I may add, getting back to also WISE is a big driver to this. Just that the net, their take or pay contracts, they're expensive, it's treated water, and it usually comes at a low demand period. So ASR offers a great place to put the water, so you don't take or pay. You can actually take the water and store it, and so that becomes a valuable tool for using the WISE water. So I think that's I think going to be a driver for a lot of South Metro areas, because again, these contracts are escalating too. I think in the amount of water that's available and had to be taken. It's like Stonegate's requirements are much greater. Their deliveries from WISE, as it expands, is going to be much greater than their wintertime demand. So they have to take or pay, or there's been a lot of exchanges, but those exchanges I think are going to get less and less in the future. So you're going to have to take the water, and so they're gearing up to be able to take the wintertime deliveries to use their entitled WISE water.
I'm going to jump to a question from Jane, and Jane, you're here if you want to speak to it yourself, but oh, you're muted. Let's see.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
oh, go ahead. Yeah,
Thank you.
sure.
Well, my impression is that the major federal agencies that deal with water, the Corps of Engineers and the Bureau of Reclamation, who deal with water supply, don't seem to have considered ASR option as a viable something that is really worthy of serious consideration. They often sort of mention it in passing in NEPA documents, but then don't really look at that. And I was wondering, does that impact efforts in Colorado?
So I'll maybe take a stab at that and just say, I mean, I do think that the Bureau of Reclamation at least has funded ASR projects, or at least studies through their Water Smart program. So I think they have put some funding behind it. I don't know that they've invested, personally or as a federal agency in projects, but others may know more about that.
I'll just add, I don't know anything specifically, Nate, sorry, but I think it's the age-old problem with groundwater and ASR is out of sight, out of mind. It's just people don't see it. It doesn't grab the headlines. And I just wanted to, again, reiterate how great WECO is for putting out dedicated issues and topics like this to spread this awareness, and hopefully it can become a bigger tool in the toolbox.
I've been fighting this for 30 years, out of sight, out of mind. It's a very useful one. And again, the driving factor of WISE has really made it to the forefront. And I think also in all the roundtables around the state, I think all of them have some component of ASR in it. So I think it is gaining momentum and will in the future as we struggle, to use our water efficiently. So I think there's a question too from Dennis I see on there. Is there a practical upper limit to how much ASR can be done in the Denver aquifer or Denver Basin aquifers? I'll tackle that one real quick, is that there is way more storage available than we have water available to put in the ground. One of the things that I've battled with for years is if you add water, is it going to, raise the water level in the groundwater system significantly? The unfortunate thing is no, because it has such a high storage capacity that when there's millions of acre feet available. The publication that CGS put out years ago, I think, is even underestimated by a few orders of magnitude, and that was in hundreds of millions of acre feet of storage. And the Denver Basin itself has a significant amount of storage. When you put the water in, it displaces or compresses the water, strangely enough, and in the confined aquifers. So you're using a storage coefficient of 0.00 whatever one. That's confined, but when you're actually injecting, it's actually the specific yield value, which is like 0.15, 0.2. And so there's a huge amount of water you can store in the aquifer. It basically re pressurizes the aquifer a little bit. So we've injected years in the Denver Basin, and you see stabilized water levels, but not a huge increase because there's just so much storage available in the Denver Basin aquifer. So hundreds of millions of acre feet. We don't have hundreds of millions of acre feet of water to store in the ground.
Thanks, Courtney. So now I'm going to turn to Jane Harding. So your question was, if you want to explain more, you can, but you asked a lot of Coloradans in rural, residential, but non-agricultural areas get their drinking water from private wells. How can we be included in any advances in water supply and availability?
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of private well owners in Colorado, so.
I mean, I think it's great you're being part of the conversation today, and it would probably be beneficial to reach out to the nearest provider to see any potential ways that you can stay informed. That'd be my suggestion.
Yeah, and we're not really connected to any water provider.
Mhm.
It's all private.
Sure.
To me, it looks like there really is no advantage to being a private well owner in terms of we can maintain our wells and the quality of the water, but we cannot control access. And if we can somehow connect to a established water provider, ASR, anyone involved with any kind of ASR or advanced water planning, but I'm not sure how to do that.
Just by way of personal, I'm on my own well. I have a Lower Dawson well. It's wonderful. I love it. But it really, the ASR really doesn't, I can't employ it here because I don't, again, the things you need is the source of water and, getting it to you. So, I think the biggest thing is maybe in the larger areas, where they use it in municipal ones, that if they employ it, it basically, will slow down the rate of decline or minimize the rate of decline in the aquifer as a whole.
Mhm.
And so that would be the benefit to individual users.
Right.
And I was just going to add too that in terms of advancements and everything, the National Groundwater Association has a great website called wellowner.org, and they've got a lot of great resources for you to make sure you're sampling your water quality or using the best equipment. So check out wellowner.org.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Cynthia asks, what were the benefits or challenges working with private capital at the Terry Ranch project? Is there a desire to pursue more water infrastructure partnerships with folks like Wingfoot?
Yeah, I am not the best person to speak to kind of the benefits or challenges of the deal making or how kind of the current credit system is working. Our utility finance people are a little better at that. So I'd be happy to connect you with them if you reach out to me kind of individually. But as far as the second question, the other hat I wear for watershed program manager, is what comes to mind. And there is certainly a lot of interest right now in public-private partnerships for what we call green infrastructure, and really doing work up in the watershed to ensure quality and quantity is maintained in the face of these increased fires and drought and changes to our water supply. So there are a lot of conversations with water providers and private capital on that front.
You. And a little ways back, we had a question about how do you plan for adequate supply of water for well injection and ensure that it will meet the necessary water quality standards for injecting that water?
I guess from my standpoint, the EPA permit will have basic requirements. Basically, if it meets drinking water standards, it's acceptable for injection. What they were concerned about, 4 or 5, 7 years ago, which still hangs on, is nitrosamines in the water. At that time, again, there was no regulation for it. So when we got the Meridian permit, basically we pulled a number out of the air and said 7 nanograms of nitrosamine, give us a call. And that was the chemical of concern at that point. Again, PFAS is kind of going that way, but it looks like from my discussions with the EPA at this point was that it was going to be more regulated on the water provider than the source of the injection water rather than the injection part. But there are a lot of again, quarterly, if you're a permit system, you have quarterly testing of the water, and once a year annual what's called Appendix J list, which is a very comprehensive list of water quality sample or water quality constituents that you have to sample for. So there are water quality guidelines along the way.
Good.
And then another question, this one's from Sean. With the advancement of ASR technology and project examples, are municipalities taking a harder look at their groundwater versus renewable supply strategies?
I'll start with that one. Yes, I think definitely we are constantly monitoring our groundwater supplies as well as renewable strategies. We have to plan for at least Castle Rock doubling our population, the potential for that, which you increase your demand by that amount. So we definitely would like to have a sustainable future. So we keep a close eye on our groundwater supplies and then also incorporating that renewable supply in there as well.
Caitlin, maybe I see another one on there from Gabriel Thomas. Piggyback off Jane's question, how would water accounting and reporting be structured? How would the effects of the 100-year rule or 100-year rule change affect ASR accounting? We can touch a little bit on that. When we structured the original Denver Basin artificial extraction rules, we basically come up with there's, as I kind of say, there's blue and green water down there. We separated so you have your decreed annual appropriation and you have your ASR stored water. So the accounting, you still have the 100-year water decree or water decree 100-year life you typically on a permit, but you also then can extract all of your ASR water at any point. There are limits. So there's like a 5-year averaged rate. You can't just pull all of it out, which you probably can't do anyway. But there's two different waters down there, and you can claim either one when you pump back. So even though the physical molecule may come back that you injected, that typically is claimed as your decreed water right, and then the ASR water is left in the system. So it's a very effective way to keep water stored in the ground and still maintain the 100-year rule in permitting.
We had one other comment. There may be other questions that I'm missing, but I noticed one way early up that Birgit kind of started to answer. Somebody asked why a utility would stop doing ASR. And Birgit responded for Colorado Springs utilities, but does anyone have other thoughts about why you would stop doing ASR or why that has occurred in other places?
Well, I can touch on that. Like Consolidated got picked up by, I think, into the Denver system, so they really didn't need it as much anymore. Castle Pines, I think it was just a demonstration one, and again, sources of water to them. So they're very. It's usually, and I saw the response from Castle or from Colorado Springs. There was a lot. We again, surface water, more surface water oriented, and having flows that are more in the surface water flow categories in CFS and huge amounts. Sometimes, like Colorado Springs, I saw the response that the pumping rate wasn't great as compared to what they can pull out of their surface water system. So there's a variety of things that can maybe stop it. Again, the availability of water, uh, again, the rate at which you can get it in or out may be an issue. But again, I think, as I noted, I think at East Cherry Creek, they can store a lot of water, but they'll have to put, additional wells in to get the capacity that they need to get it back out. So there are various reasons why it doesn't work or is not applicable. I shouldn't say it doesn't work. It should work, but the applicability of it may vary from place to place. That would maybe say that it's not a great fit.
We have just a few minutes left, and I think we've gotten through almost all of the questions in the chat. If if we've missed something, feel free to boost your question and put it in there again. But if not, I wonder if our panelists have any, closing thoughts, anything they didn't get to speak to. And I do see one more question. Jenny asks, on average, is there a cost per acre foot ASR is feasible versus no longer feasible for municipalities?
I don't know if Lauren wants to take that or there's some things like the as I mentioned, like for Stonegate, they have a WISE contract where they take or pay. And so they're either going to take it or pay for it. And so the economics of it are that we want to take the water and use it since we're paying for it, so to speak. And so that makes it, desirable for ASR for them. That's why they're expanding theirs, is that in order to take advantage of the WISE water that they'll have contracted, they are expanding their ASR to be able to handle that and take it. The other, which is exciting, I think, which Lauren has too, which I've for 30 years been trying to get, is the energy production. In that we're Castle Rock's, experimenting with that. I think that's a real benefit from the carbon footprint, and it makes for a very good hydroelectric project. If you develop energy on the way down, that minimizes your pumping cost because you've generated electricity on the way down in fairly significant percentages too. So your pumping costs back out are minimized because of the electricity you generate on the way down. When you think about it, there are water levels down at 1,000 feet. There are very few hydroelectric plants that have 1,000 feet of head to generate electricity. So multiple wells can produce a fair amount of electricity, which I think Lauren touched on a little bit.
Yeah, no, I'll piggyback. Definitely the WISE water is a huge component for storage. I mean, we haven't fully looked at it yet with a fully operating program, but I'm sure once we're able to start storing and kind of have those calculations on the cost per acre foot, but certainly much back to town. So definitely, at least from our initial perspective, it's definitely cost effective.
I also see another question about who owns the water once it's injected into the aquifer. The entity who injects it owns it. and you manage it by metering in and out. And everybody, I've been dealing with so long. Everybody worries about I'm going to put it in the aquifer, it's going to run away to the next person, and I lost all my benefit. The typical movement of water in the Denver Basin, on average, just generally, is about 50 feet per year. So if you put water in, it's only going to move about 50 feet in a year. So unless you're right on the boundary or whatever, it's not going to move anywhere. So you really maintain control of that water. And again, it's from an accounting perspective, you still own that water and manage that water. So you have your decreed amount and your ASR injected amount, and you can pump that out of your well. So that's managed by the extraction permit by the SEO.
All right, thank you. So many great questions. Thanks everyone for your interest and for being here. Our wonderful speakers. Thanks Representative Smith for making time for this, for Courtney, Matt, Lauren, Kevin, Mike, and I think Nate already hopped off. But I appreciate everyone being here. I'll follow up with a recording later this week. So look out for that. And I think you have everyone's contact info. It sounds like all of our speakers are happy to talk more if you have further thoughts. So thanks again, and good to see everyone today. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you, Caitlin.